Is Billy Donovan hurting the Chicago Bulls' youth development? Fans are questioning whether his coaching style is holding back the team's young talent. With inconsistent rotations and limited opportunities for emerging players, is Donovan the right coach for the Bulls' future? Plus, rumors of a De'Aaron Fox trade are swirling, but let's be real, Chicago isn't making that move. So what's the real plan for the Bulls moving forward? Are they building for the future or stuck in NBA purgatory? Let's break it all down. It's time to talk about something that's been frustrating a lot of Chicago Bulls fans: the way Billy Donovan has handled the team's young players and their development. If you've been following the Bulls closely, you know this has been a growing issue. Young talent comes in, but instead of being nurtured and developed into key contributors, we see inconsistent minutes, a lack of clear roles, and, in some cases, players losing confidence altogether. And if you're thinking about the Bulls making a big move like trading for De'Aaron Fox, let's be real, that's not happening. Let's start with Billy Donovan and his track record when it comes to youth development. When he first arrived in Chicago, there was optimism. Donovan had coached young stars in Oklahoma City like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Bulls fans hoped he would do the same in Chicago. The Bulls had a promising young core with players like Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, and even Lonzo Ball before his unfortunate injury struggles. But instead of seeing steady growth and defined roles for these players, what we've gotten is inconsistency both in playing time and in development. Take Patrick Williams, for example. The former 4th overall pick was supposed to be a cornerstone of the franchise, a two-way forward with elite defensive potential and the ability to contribute on offense. But under Donovan, his development has stalled. Some of that is on Williams himself. He's been passive at times and hasn't always played with aggression. But coaching plays a huge role in development, and it feels like Williams has been thrown into situations without a clear game plan for his growth. One game, he's getting significant minutes and playing a key role. The next, he's barely involved. That kind of inconsistency is tough for a young player trying to find his place in the league. The same goes for Ayo Dosunmu. When he burst onto the scene as a rookie, he was a fan favorite, bringing energy, defense, and a fearless attitude. But in his second and third seasons, his role has fluctuated. Some of that is due to roster changes, but again, player development requires stability, and Donovan hasn't provided that. Instead of getting a defined role and a consistent opportunity to improve, Ayo's minutes have been all over the place. The Bulls had a real chance to develop him into a long-term key contributor, but without a clear plan, he's been stuck in limbo. Then there's Kobe White. Now, Kobe has shown real growth, particularly in his ability to play as a more composed and well-rounded guard. But let's not forget, it took years for the Bulls to fully embrace his development. He was shuffled between being a starter, a bench player, a secondary ball handler, and even a catch-and-shoot specialist. There was never a clear, focused effort to turn him into a true point guard or a legitimate scoring threat off the bench. He's figuring it out now, but it shouldn't have taken this long. And we can't ignore the biggest issue of all: young players simply don't seem to thrive in Billy Donovan's system. Look at the contrast between the Bulls and other teams around the league. Teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, Houston Rockets, and Indiana Pacers have been able to take young talent and turn them into legitimate contributors quickly. That's because they make development a priority. They let young players play through mistakes, give them real opportunities, and build around their strengths. Meanwhile, the Bulls continue to lean heavily on veteran players, limiting the chances for their young talent to grow. This brings us to the talk of the Bulls making a blockbuster move for someone like De'Aaron Fox. Some fans have been dreaming about a trade, thinking Fox could be the missing piece for this team. But let's be real, there is no indication that the Bulls are making a serious push for him. First off, the Sacramento Kings have no reason to move Fox unless they're getting a massive return. He's their franchise point guard, a proven scorer, and a key part of their success. The Kings are competing for playoff positioning in the West, so why would they trade away their best player? Even if the Bulls wanted to pursue Fox, they simply don't have the assets to get a deal done. Any trade for a player of his caliber would require major pieces in return, likely including Zach LaVine or multiple young players and draft picks. The Bulls aren't exactly loaded with assets, and they don't have the draft capital that teams like the Knicks, Thunder, or even the Spurs could offer. So the idea that Chicago is about to pull off a blockbuster move like this just doesn't hold up. Instead of hoping for a superstar trade, the Bulls should be focusing on player development and internal growth. They have talented young players, but if they don't start maximizing their potential, they'll be stuck in the same cycle: good enough to be competitive, but not good enough to be a real threat in the Eastern Conference. This is where Donovan's coaching philosophy really hurts Chicago. He coaches like someone who doesn't trust young players unless they're already polished. Instead of letting Patrick Williams experiment and expand his offensive game, he's been relegated to a low-usage role where he's expected to stand in the corner and wait for open shots. Instead of letting Ayo Dosunmu play through mistakes and develop his playmaking, his minutes fluctuate depending on matchups. This kind of approach doesn't build confidence, and it certainly doesn't allow players to reach their full potential. And let's talk about Lonzo Ball for a second. When the Bulls traded for Lonzo, they envisioned him as a cornerstone piece, someone who could push the tempo, distribute the ball, and provide elite perimeter defense. And when he was healthy, it worked. The Bulls looked like a legitimate Eastern Conference threat, playing fast and moving the ball beautifully. But after Lonzo's injury, there was no real effort to replace what he brought. Instead of chasing a trade that isn't realistic, the Bulls should focus on maximizing the talent they already have. That starts with fully embracing the development of players like Patrick Williams, Kobe White, and Ayo Dosunmu. Williams should be given more offensive responsibility. Let him attack the basket, let him take mid-range shots, and let him fail so he can learn. Ayo should have a consistent role in the rotation as a two-way guard who can disrupt opponents and push the pace. And Kobe, who has already shown major growth, should be trusted as a legitimate playmaker. Another huge issue with Billy Donovan's coaching is his reluctance to experiment with different lineups. There have been so many games where the Bulls' offense has stagnated, yet Donovan sticks with the same rotation. Young players often get pulled after one or two mistakes, while veterans are allowed to play through poor performances. That double standard hurts confidence, and it's one of the reasons why young players have struggled to take the next step under his leadership. Instead, the Bulls doubled down on veteran-heavy lineups and failed to invest in developing another true point guard. Now, with Lonzo still out indefinitely, the Bulls are scrambling for answers. The focus should be on giving Patrick Williams a more defined offensive role, ensuring Ayo Dosunmu gets consistent minutes, and continuing to develop Kobe White as a true playmaker. The reality is, Billy Donovan's coaching style has favored veteran-heavy lineups, and that has come at the expense of young player development. If the Bulls truly want to build for the future, they need to take a long, hard look at how they're handling their young talent. And until they do that, expecting a major trade to change everything is just wishful thinking. The path to improvement starts from within, and right now, the Bulls aren't doing enough to make that happen.